Hello, my name is AJ Berman, and welcome to my Theater 4500 final project. Think back to some of the scariest characters you can think of on film. Some of the ones that you may have thought of were made through costume. This is any kind of practical effects, prosthetics, or any kind of modification where the human performer is still the one acting. We'll be analyzing some costumes of monsters, aliens, any kind of inhuman creature, and a sort of horror lens. So we'll be analyzing some costumes throughout history, trying to find similar elements, and researching to answer the question, how do you make a human look not human, and what makes those costumes so scary? So, one of the earliest examples of what I'm trying to talk about is the movie Frankenstein, the original movie that came out in 1931. So this movie was definitely a pioneer for these kind of early monster movies. So we all know how the story goes. Dr. Frankenstein wants to create life. He creates Frankenstein's monster out of a bunch of mutilated dead body parts, and creates this towering monster figure. Goes on to figure out what it means to be human, but also scaring some people along the way. The costume designer for this movie is Jack Pierce. He also did a lot of other of the early monster movies, and the actor who played him is Boris Karloff. So the purpose of this costume is to adapt the descriptions from the book and make him into real life. There are a lot of interesting creative decisions to this costume. So a very unique feature of this costume that wasn't exactly adapted from the books was the kind of massive forehead and the eyebrow ridge. So the prosthetics was used. So it's mostly made out of layers of cotton, spirit gum, which is also used now, but it's a kind of adhesive made from resin, and also made of collodion, which is a kind of liquid plastic that cover the layers. Another feature also using prosthetics, also made of cotton, similar materials, was the eyelids, which really makes him look like a kind of dead figure, which you can see with the droopy eyelids and how he looks essentially dead. Some other features was the scar on the right side of his face. Also the bolts or electrodes in his neck, which is a new feature for the movie, to make him have a sort of robotic look, but also show his origins from electricity. An interesting feature is the actor Karloff had dentures normally, but he took them out for the movie to have his cheeks more caved in, so he looks more like a corpse, where the flesh would have been rotted away. And then finally, his face and hands were covered with a grayish-green grease paint to also give him a pale, ghostly look. All the pictures and videos that I've been showing before have been colorized because the movie was made in 1931. A good indication for what the color would have been is the original prop head, which was essentially a style guide that Pierce used to create the makeup each time. As you can see, it's more close to a even pale yellow kind of color, which is actually more accurate to the book because it describes him with yellow skin rather than bright green like we may know. And you can see pictures of him having the makeup done by Pierce, and this process took 3 hours and then also a few hours for the makeup to be taken off. This had to be done for every time they were shooting. And more of a feature is the actor himself, but Karloff was 5'11", but he also wore boots with lifts to make him 6'6". So he really appears as just this towering figure over all of the other actors. In regards to his clothing, it's pretty plain, which is kind of different from most depictions I've seen of Frankenstein's monster, where he would normally have like tattered clothes or like something a zombie would be wearing. But in this movie, he just wears a normal black suit, normal pants. The only interesting feature is it was specifically chosen to be not fitting around the arms to make his arms look longer and his fingers look longer so he can seem more monstrous. I think a lot of these features are very interesting and also supporting the story of Frankenstein, because he's supposed to be this childlike, naive character who does end up harming characters in the film, but he doesn't intend to. A kind of point in this movie is that everyone that sees him is terrified of him, including the audience. A very fun piece of trivia is the actress Mae Clarke, who plays Elizabeth in the movie, was just so terrified of Karloff in costume that she asked him to wiggle his pinky finger whenever they had scenes together or whenever they were playing the character, because she was just so terrified of him. She wanted confirmation that it was really him inside of the costume and not the monster taking over. I think it really goes to show the power that costume can have, that along with having an effect on the audience, it can also have effect on the actors that are in the movie who know everything is fictional but can still be scared of it anyway. Because this is one of the first uses of prosthetics to make a kind of scary monster in movies, I understand how it could be frightening to see it for the first time. Overall, I think the costume did an amazing job for its time of displaying this frightening creature. Some other costumes I would have liked to talk about that were during the time and have similar elements are Dracula, Count Orlok from Nosferatu, the creature from the Black Lagoon, Wolfman, the Mummy. And a bit later, but also in the realm of TV, the Sensorites from Doctor Who, the Sea Devils from Doctor Who. The show did a great job of using prosthetics to create its alien creatures. I think the most important part of the costume is the fact that it's just simple features like costume, makeup, and prosthetics that turn him from a human into a monster. Alright, the next character we're going to be analyzing is the Alien, or Xenomorphs, or Big Chap from the movie Alien, directed by Ridley Scott, and the costume design was mostly by H.R. Giger. So while John Mallow is listed as the costume designer, he mostly did the spacesuits for the human actors of the film, but H.R. Giger, he has very interesting artwork. He started off as a painter, multimedia kind of artist who created some of these pieces of art where you can see the very clear inspiration in what led to be the depiction of the alien. Another prominent figure is Carlo Rambaldi, who did most of the work on the mechanical head that was part of the costume. You may know him as the designer for E.T. With E.T. being a combination of puppets and animatronics, I think it's important to say how much of an overlap it has with costumes. Some characters I was thinking about for this video would be The Thing, but that's animatronics. Terminator uses stop motion, and even the movie Alien for the earlier stages does use puppets. But for this class being what it is, I think it's important to emphasize the unique aspects that costumes can have compared to these other mediums. A common quote that appeared a lot in documentaries and words from Giger was that
I do not want to make a film about a man in a rubber suit.
Those classical monster movies he wanted to shy away from and have something unique looking for this film. Some important features taken over were, of course, the large stature of the creature, the oblong head. The process for choosing the actor was very interesting. They went through a lot of options, thinking of people like contortionists, wrestlers, football players, but the main point was to find some kind of very tall person and also very skinny. The actor chosen for the role was Balaji Badejo. He was found by a casting director in a pub. He was purely chosen because he's a 6'10", skinny African man. But once Giger saw him, he knew he was the perfect fit for the role. A mold was created of Badejo so they could craft the suit around him. It was made of mostly rubber and latex. The mechanical head was mostly done by Rambaldi. It was made of fiberglass to make most of the structure and then also covered in latex. It was radio controlled, so it includes motors for the jaw and for the tongue to extend out. Very interesting fact is that the actors weren't allowed to see what the costume looked like before they were filming with it, just for the purpose that the director, Ridley Scott, could have them be more surprised and have it be genuine fear that the actors were feeling. I think this adds a lot of mystery to the character and makes it even more scary, just because most of what you see of it is just quick glances and a lot of action. And despite being in so much merchandise, being the most recognizable feature of the movie, in the first movie, the alien only appeared for a total of 3 minutes. That's why a lot of this footage is behind the scenes and there's really not a lot of clear pictures on the internet, but it does add a lot of scariness and does take away from that man in a rubber suit feeling. Alright, so I did a poll on my Instagram taking 10 of these characters which I found interesting costumes, and I asked them to rank how scary they are and any comments they had. For least scary, we had Frankenstein from the 2025 movie. And next we have Scarier Than Him, Frankenstein from 1931. The next is The Creature from the Black Lagoon. My friend Colin said that because the practical effects were so rudimentary, you can really just tell it's a person in a suit. And next, surprisingly, we have Pinhead from Hellraiser. He's the most directly horror-related character, and we had a lot of disagreement. Someone rated him 10 and then someone rated him 1. He was described as hard to look at, but also he just looks like a human with pins in his head. And next we have the Ood from Doctor Who, and then we have the Silence from Doctor Who, and then the Sensorites. I think these were more unfamiliar, but I think the designs themselves are middle of the road scary. And then we have the Predator, especially without his mask. And then we have the Alien. And then with an average of 8.2 out of 10 on the scariness scale, we have the Pale Man from Pan's Labyrinth. He was described as a naked white-skinned humanoid that is just different enough to be just not right. And that's the pinnacle of horror. He's described as unnatural, he has contorted skin, quote, that he looks almost human. And concluding this whole video, I'd say there's some clear patterns that emerge. These humanoid shapes aren't clearly just someone covered in prosthetics. I think another interesting feature is tall actors were chosen. Features like the face is hidden away to make the character appear even less human, but also keeping some human elements to still make it extremely unnerving.